Welcome, fellow theorists, to a Zelda presentation. The map of the beautiful land of Hyrule appears to have changed considerably over the years, but I'll shove them together into one true Hyrule with heavy interpretation. The rules are contentious to say the least among different theorists, but my rules scale the map as much as I want, and ignore compass orientation to preserve relative locations of regions. It's easier to retcon one compass than move every landmark with no better explanation. To start, here's the most iconic map, Link to the Past, and by extension, Link Between Worlds, and also Four Swords Adventure. Four Swords Adventure expands and adds much more detail to the areas of Hyrule between what was shown in Link to the Past, and erroneously shows it as a small island, but there are clear call forwards. The Desert of Mystery has the same Japanese name in both games. The river, which in Link to the Past empties into Lake Hylia, instead flows through the swamp out to the ocean. The southern marsh is the artificially frozen area. Many dungeons are the same, like the Eastern Palace. Rotating Link to the Past a little over 45 degrees and putting it over Breath of the Wild, the largest and most detailed map, aligns Lake Hylia over its counterpart, as well as the woods with a clear homage in its sword pedestal. The East Death Mountain peak in Zora's River becomes Zoraland. The West Death Mountain peak becomes the slope of Death Mountain, as you don't go to a volcanic caldera in Link to the Past. Link Between Worlds' lava-spewing spectacle rock is just dumb, and I'm ignoring it. The Eastern Palace ends up near Kakariko. Kakariko is clearly not to scale, and the Desert of Mystery seems to end up in a separate desert where the Satori Mountain later arises. Not sure what to make of that, but here's where Link to the Past goes. We must therefore ignore that Four Swords Adventure is shown as a small island, because Link to the Past is landlocked. Lore tells me the original intent for Hyrule Fantasy was to be something stretched like this with Link to the Past, with Spectacle Rock in the north, Zora's River to be the same shape, the giant lake in the center to flow around Hyrule Castle, and then to empty into those wetlands, with the small lake being the former Lake Hylia, the desert in the southwest, and Kakariko famous for its graveyard. Here's where Link to the Past coast is, as Hyrule Kingdom definitely has coastlines in the oracles. That would put it over Breath like this. It's okay. In addition to whatever Link to the Past has, there's also the game's starting place and the general coast. The Hylia River seems to have reversed its flow if we assume it flows into the sea off-map. The only thing I don't like about it is how central Hyrule is flooded with a giant lake now. I once saw an unofficial guide that called the big lake Lake Hylia, and you can see that it has a similar shape to Breath's Lake Hylia. Chateau showed me this alignment, and I prefer it. Color some regions like this, and imagine my brother using the Photoshop warp tool on them. Which looks like this. My brother said it ain't pretty, but it's the best he could do, and that I might have been overestimating the warp tool's powers. This is how I like Hyrule Fantasy over Breath of the Wild. Every region has a counterpart, and they nearly all border each other in the correct places with only two exceptions. It's actually close to the size it was inflated to in Valiant Comics, explains the southwesterly placement of Spectacle Rock, and gives Lake Hylia and Lake Floria satisfactory counterparts. Maybe I should headcanon up the waterfall ahead and the Lost Hills as the road to Zora's domain. Next, Adventure of Link, which is not to scale. For one, Maze Island is way too big. It's only that big because Link himself is one map tile big, and the transition across the bridge shows it should probably be smaller. For another, I like to think that East Hyrule Island is much further away than the mere seconds the trip takes in-game. The very wrong Zelda.com timeline from 2002 claimed that the trip was big enough for Link to get shipwrecked, and Link's awakening to take place during the commute. I myself expanded in my hypothetical remake into an overnight trip up by steamship, but there's a murderer aboard. Lastly, the little area in the corner looks like the South Hyrule from Zelda 1, but it's way too small to be the entire Hyrule we're familiar with. I don't like that even one bit. This map from Valiant Comics enlarged South Hyrule, which is the Zelda 1 map, so now Adventure of Link's map might seem to fit over Breath's entire map if you flooded the middle and deleted Death Mountain. But remember, Link to the Past is already there, and the rest of Adventure of Link is a completely different region, so it can't go there. Rejecting any presented scale of South Hyrule, my solution is to put the coast of the caves along Akala's coast, aligning the river mouth with the tech lab, and retconning the South Hyrule area into Maple Point's visible water. This gives a satisfactory size for North Hyrule's biomes and villages. And now, we have the first 4 games together over Breath of the Wild, as Eventide Island is a miniature homage to Koholint Island 2. Toronbo Beach is in the northwest of it, and the mountain is in the southwest, so it's rotated 135 degrees. Now it's Ocarina time, but there's actually no singular definitive map, so which map should we use? I've got several maps to try, and I'll compare all of them with two anchor locations, Death Mountain and Kakiri Forest, both clearly present in Wind Waker's non-negotiable 7,000 by 7,000 yard grid. Here's a cool poster. It may be at a slightly oblique perspective, but I like how it shows how far the forest and mountain extend. Also of note is what seems to be an extra wide tributary of the river through Gerudo Valley from the mountains of the north. Here's the map extracted from the game's models, which has a near-identical desert location to the poster, but swings Lake Hylia and Zora's Domain closer to each other. The inventory minimap is at a severely oblique perspective, so it's probably wrong by making the southern edges way too big. It has the same Zora's Fountain as the poster, and makes the desert much further away, right under Forsaken Fortress in fact. A Redditor's map scaled to the height of Link, however, puts everything further apart, and also thinks that the entire Kingdom of Hyrule is less than half a square kilometer. That's smaller than the Great Plateau. Really gives you an idea of how computing power has improved since 1998. This wild-style map contracts the desert very much and folds it downwards. Interesting they made up a coastline and added some woods and a pond northwest of the castle. And Link to the Past should also fit over Ocarina. That's like common knowledge, isn't it? Anyways, I've put all those together and drawn the definitive Ocarina of Time map. I'm pretty proud of it. That whole setup must of course go over Breath of the Wild like this. The Hylia River's reversed its flow again compared to Zelda 1. The entire western side of the map is a huge desert instead of a snowy mountain range. Though in my fan game, a prequel to Hyrule Fantasy, Ganondorf wishes to turn the desert temperate. At least I thought to put in the extra south desert from one of the maps, which fits Breath's desert. Twilight Princess looks like a strange shape, doesn't it? Faron and Ordon are a long spindly tail. Hyrule Field has been broken up by giant chasms and mountain ranges. However, rotating it justifies it perfectly into a square. They must have just retconned the compass, no matter how many times I'm disagreed with about this. Aligning Lake Hylia and Death Mountain over their counterparts gives a positive result for the unusual northern Zora's Domain. It's now Hebra Waterfall. And Kakariko, with its Zora Graveyard, is the classic Zora's Domain, even featuring a tunnel to Lake Hylia, which due to erosion is now much lower. The extra wide river from the poster matches perfectly with the new Zora's River. So my geology theory is that the Zoras abandoned their old domain temporarily and moved to the northern water source when it became more important, and the new water source was so much bigger it caused a huge amount of erosion of Lake Hylia's soft sedimentary rock. We know that Hebra Waterfall didn't originally flow into that little pond because there's a column standing in it. Creating a champion said Tanager Canyon is more recent tectonic in origin, must be how the river can flow over it. Additionally, much of Snow Peak is Gerudo Highlands, and Kakariko Gorge is near Lanayru Promenade. However, Ordon, the Temple of Time, and most of the desert have disappeared into the sea. At least the Arbiter's Grounds is near to the ruins of that name in Breath. Another interesting coincidence is that the hidden village should be under Windfall Island's map square. I have a very interesting theory about Outset Island and its counterparts across time. The theme is a remix of Kakiri Forest, but that's where Time Link came from, but remember, Forest Havens is too, and that one actually is Kakiri Forest. Lurelyn's architecture looks like Outset, but Wild Link came from Hateno instead, which looks more like Ocarina's Kakariko. Encyclopedia, as you know, audaciously suggests Outset Island to be Ordon Village because that's where Twilight Link came from. But you know what? I don't think they're quite trustworthy given their record of saying ridiculous things. Like Dragon Roost Island is Zora's domain instead of Death Mountain because the Zora evolved into Rito, or that the Zelda 1 map is just on Link to the Past's Death Mountain. In the manga, Twilight Link originally lived in Rufleo Village near the desert, where all the boys trained to become brave swordsmen. Outset Island is located near the desert, and it has a swordsman and a tradition of dressing boys in the hero's green clothes in the hope they'll become brave. Therefore, Outset Island is Rufleo Village. Encyclopedia was close in suggesting that Wind and Twilight came from the same place, but missed the mark because they didn't read the manga. And that's why you should read the manga. Minish Cap, one of the smallest maps in scope, and also my least favorite game in the series. This alignment goes with a string of Minish-named locations: Hyrule Castle, Minish Woods, Trilby Plain, Krenel Peak. Its river doesn't flow into anything, unfortunately. Ironic how this is almost entirely on Link to the Past Death Mountain area. Maybe Encyclopedia was onto something with that suggestion too, lol. Easy to see how amateurs unfamiliar with the series like them could confuse the first 2D game released for the first 2D game on the timeline. Four Swords has the least detailed map in the series, but as you can see, there's the range of volcanoes to the northwest, coast to the east, and more land to the northeast. Something around Akala is a possibility. This puts it right next to its neighbor Minish Cap and makes its river flow into something. This is perfect, and I'm keeping it. Finally, here's my very silly and controversial Majora's Mask. I'm not saying they are the same place, I'm just saying this is the Light World equivalent. Lining up the western coastline of East Hyrule Island, Nabooru Town is Clock Town, the southern swamps are in the same place, and Darunia Town is in the general region where the Gorons live. If we assume we can make Maze Island smaller, it's near Stone Tower. The only disadvantage is Akana is underwater. Remember, the gap between the coast and the island is supposed to be much wider than shown. So, ladies non-binaries and gentlemen, to conclude, here's all the maps of Hyrule on top of each other. Hyrule Fantasy, Adventure of Link, Link to the Past, Link's Awakening, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Four Swords, Wind Waker, Minish Cap, and Twilight Princess, all over Breath of the Wild. That's like half the series. I can't be bothered to map Skyward Sword right now because I haven't time. Also, nobody is sure how far the western bound of this continent stretches, but we know Kalacia is somewhere west of Hyrule. Perhaps I'll put some things in the gap west of Adventure of Link. That is the end of my presentation. Thank you for bearing with me.